They couldn't see him until one sniper killed 345 men. During the final months of World War II, soldiers began disappearing along entire sections of the Eastern Front. There were no explosions, no firefights, no warning shots. Patrols went out and didn't come back. Units reported losses without ever seeing the enemy. According to official military records, over the course of multiple operations, one sniper was responsible for 345 confirmed kills. Not in a single battle, not in one day, but week after week, in snow-covered mountains and forests where visibility was low and fear spread faster than gunfire. The enemy knew someone was out there. They just never knew where. They searched for him, sent patrols, changed routes. It didn't matter, because by the time they realized what was happening, hundreds were already dead, and they had never seen the man who pulled the trigger. This is the documented story of a sniper who turned invisibility into a weapon, and why the enemy almost never knew he was there until it was too late. Winter on the Eastern Front did not begin with gunfire. It began with silence. Snow covered the Carpathian Mountains in thick, uneven layers, muting footsteps, swallowing sound, turning entire valleys into white voids. Roads vanished. Landmarks disappeared. Forests became corridors of frozen branches and shadow. Visibility was limited. Sound traveled unpredictably. Snow erased tracks within hours. For most soldiers, these conditions were a liability. For one man, they were an advantage. The records would eventually attach a name to those 345 confirmed kills. Matthäus Hetzenauer. He was not famous at the time, not a symbol, not even discussed outside his immediate sector. According to unit records, he was a mountain infantryman assigned to sniper duties during the later stages of the war on the Eastern Front. His area of operations stretched across harsh terrain, steep slopes, narrow passes, frozen forests, places where movement was slow and mistakes were fatal. This environment shaped everything. He did not rely on speed or volume of fire. He relied on stillness. According to post-war documentation and wartime reports, he preferred firing positions that required long approaches and longer exits, routes that took hours to reach, positions that forced him to lie motionless for extended periods, sometimes through entire daylight cycles. He chose locations where return fire was almost impossible. Ridges that masked muzzle flash, snowbanks that absorbed sound, angles where the bullet's origin could not be easily traced. He also made a decision that would later define his reputation. He avoided telescopic sights whenever possible. Scopes reflected light, froze, forced the shooter into a narrower field of vision. Instead, Hetzenauer favored iron sights. That choice limited range, but increased control. No glare, no glass to betray position. Every shot required closer proximity. Every shot required patience. This was not a volume problem. It was a proximity problem. According to confirmed tallies, his kills accumulated gradually, across multiple engagements, not through dramatic single battles, but through repetition. The same pattern, executed again and again. Wait. Observe. Fire once. Move. Enemy units noticed the pattern long before they understood it. Reports mention soldiers refusing to advance along exposed ridgelines. Orders were issued to move in larger groups, then smaller ones. Nothing worked. Every adjustment created new vulnerabilities. A larger group meant more noise. More noise meant predictability. A smaller group meant isolation. Isolation meant disappearance. The enemy attempted counter-sniper tactics. Spotters were deployed. Suppressive fire was ordered into suspected positions. They were firing at snow. What made the situation worse was that Hetzenauer did not operate continuously from a single area. He shifted sectors after periods of activity, allowing fear to linger behind him while losses began elsewhere. To the men on the ground, it felt like the front itself was haunted. According to records, his confirmed kill count continued to rise even as overall fighting intensity decreased. This was late war fighting. Movements were cautious, resources strained, morale fragile. And still, the disappearances continued. By the time higher command began compiling cumulative tallies, the number was already extreme. 345 confirmed kills, not claimed, confirmed. A number that stood out even in a war defined by mass casualties. Yet what troubled commanders was not just the scale. It was the lack of countermeasures. They could not predict when he would fire, could not identify where he would fire from, and could not force him into a fight on their terms. The problem was no longer tactical. It was psychological. Soldiers did not fear attack. They feared exposure. And as long as one man could remain unseen, every open field, every ridgeline, every pause in movement felt like a mistake waiting to be punished. By the end of this phase of fighting, the damage extended beyond casualties. Entire sectors slowed. Initiative was lost. Momentum disappeared. All because one sniper had turned patience into a weapon and invisibility into a force multiplier. What made this even more dangerous was that Hetzenauer was not improvising. He was following a method, and as the enemy began to adapt, that method would be tested in ways he had never faced before. The enemy did not stay passive. As losses accumulated, higher command finally accepted what frontline units already knew. This was not random attrition, not weather, not confusion. This was a sniper operating with consistency. Orders began to change. Movement was restricted to covered routes. Open slopes were avoided. Ridge lines that had been used for months were suddenly declared forbidden. Counter-sniper teams were deployed. Their job was simple in theory. Locate the shooter, fix his position, eliminate him. In practice, it failed almost immediately. According to reports from the period, these teams never engaged their target directly, never exchanged fire, never even confirmed visual contact. What they encountered instead were signs of presence, without presence itself, spent cartridges buried in snow, firing positions already abandoned, tracks that ended abruptly and then vanished. The first adaptation was sound. Enemy units attempted to provoke fire by firing into suspected zones, hoping to draw a response. They used suppressive fire, timed volleys, even deliberate exposure of individual soldiers to act as bait. Nothing worked. The sniper did not respond on command, did not react to pressure. He chose his moments. That choice is what kept him alive. According to unit notes, Matthäus Hetzenauer rarely fired more than once from the same position. When he did, it was because he had already planned his exit route. Every shot was followed by movement. Every movement was followed by hours of waiting. But even the best system eventually encounters friction. During one extended operation in mountainous terrain, Hetzenauer selected a firing position overlooking a narrow approach used by enemy patrols. The angle was ideal, the background clean. The snowpack absorbed sound. The shot was clean, but the reaction was faster than expected. According to post-war analysis, the patrol's spacing had changed. A trailing element moved sooner than anticipated, approaching from a direction that was not visible from the firing position. For the first time in weeks, Hetzenauer was not alone with the terrain. He did not fire again. Instead, he waited. Minutes passed, then longer. Snow fell lightly, covering the disturbance from the shot. Breath had to be controlled. Any movement risked silhouette against the white ground. At close range, iron sights offered no advantage. Only stillness did. Eventually, the patrol moved on, unable to identify the shooter's location. Hetzenauer withdrew using a route that added hours to his return but avoided detection. This was the first clear indication that the enemy was learning. Spacing was changing, reaction times improving, patrol leaders adjusting tactics. The advantage of invisibility was still there, but it was narrowing, and the margin for error was shrinking. Adaptation did not stop at the tactical level. As losses continued, commanders escalated their response. Entire areas were designated as sniper threat zones. Movement was restricted to nighttime when possible. Daylight patrols were reduced. This created a new problem. Limited movement slowed operations. Slower operations created predictable schedules. Predictability favored the sniper. Hetzenauer adjusted accordingly. According to surviving documentation, He began selecting firing positions not just for visibility, but for anticipated movement patterns. He observed routes for days, without firing, mapping routines, timing pauses, identifying hesitation points. Then he fired once, and disappeared again. The enemy attempted a second adaptation. They began deploying decoy patrols, men instructed to move conspicuously, hoping to draw fire, while observers watched likely firing points. The result was the same. No shot, no reveal. The sniper refused to be rushed. What followed was the most dangerous phase of his operations, because as countermeasures intensified, so did proximity. Iron sights demanded shorter distances. Shorter distances increased risk. According to later reconstructions, Hetzenauer sometimes allowed patrols to pass within lethal range without firing, waiting for a target that justified exposure. Officers, NCOs, messengers, targets whose absence would be noticed. This decision increased effectiveness and danger. One missed shot, one misjudged movement, one footprint in the wrong direction. Any of these would have ended the pattern. Enemy units began firing preemptively into suspected cover areas, saturating likely firing points with rifle and machine gun fire. Trees splintered, snow exploded into air. Ground that had once been safe became lethal without warning. This forced another adjustment. Hetzenauer shortened his firing windows, reduced exposure time, accepted fewer opportunities. The confirmed kill count rose more slowly, but it continued to rise. And with it, the psychological pressure increased. Soldiers no longer trusted camouflage, no longer trusted silence, no longer trusted distance. Every halt felt dangerous. Every order to advance felt personal. According to reports, morale degradation became measurable. Units requested reassignment. Patrol leaders altered routes without authorization. Commanders noted hesitation where there had been confidence weeks earlier. This was not because of losses alone. It was because the losses felt arbitrary. The sniper could not be predicted, could not be seen, could not be forced into engagement. And despite increasing countermeasures, he remained active. But the enemy was not finished adapting. A third response was coming, and it would bring Hetzenauer closer to death than he had been at any point so far. The third adaptation came quietly. There was no formal announcement. No written orders circulated among frontline units. But the behavior changed. Enemy patrols stopped reacting to single losses. They stopped pulling back, stopped scattering. Instead, they began doing something else. They waited. According to later analysis, commanders realized that chasing the sniper was failing. Every patrol sent to hunt him became another opportunity. Every search expanded the area of fear. So the logic reversed. Rather than hunting the sniper, they would force him to hunt them. Small units began occupying terrain that could not be bypassed, narrow passes, ridgelines controlling supply routes, choke points that movement depended on. They stayed in place longer than usual, accepting risk, daring the sniper to act. This was no longer counter-sniper work. It was a trap. The moment a shot was fired, response teams were prepared to flood the area, not to search broadly, but to compress space, close distance, remove escape routes. This tactic reduced one thing the sniper depended on: time. And time was everything. According to field reports, the density of troops increased around key terrain. Movement patterns became less predictable. Routes were changed without notice. Patrols overlapped. The environment that once favored invisibility began to close in. For the first time, firing meant commitment, and commitment meant danger. Hetzenauer recognized the shift almost immediately. He began passing on shots he would have taken weeks earlier. Targets walked through his sight picture and lived. Opportunities went unanswered. This restraint was not hesitation. It was calculation. Every shot now required certainty, not just of the kill, but of survival afterward. During one operation in contested mountain terrain, Hetzenauer selected a position overlooking a narrow approach that had become critical to enemy movement. It was a position he could not ignore. The observation took time. He lay motionless as patrols moved through the area repeatedly. Hours passed. Light shifted. Snow compacted beneath his weight. Eventually, the moment came. The shot was precise, but the reaction was immediate. Return fire did not spray randomly. It converged. Machine gun fire cut across the slope. Rifle shots followed in disciplined bursts. This was not panic. This was preparation. Hetzenauer moved instantly. He did not wait to assess the kill, did not look back. He crawled. Snow exploded around him as bullets struck ground and rock. The slope that had once been silent was now alive with sound. Escape routes that had been clear were now under observation. Movement had to be deliberate, fast enough to survive, slow enough to remain unseen. At one point, fire pinned him behind a shallow rise. The snow there was thin. Beneath it, frozen earth and stone offered little protection. Remaining still meant eventual discovery. Moving meant exposure. He chose movement. According to later accounts, he used terrain irregularities measured in inches, small depressions, shadows cast by uneven ground, places a standing man would never notice. After extended movement under fire, the engagement broke contact. The sniper had escaped, but the rules had changed. From that point on, every operation carried a different weight. The enemy had learned how to compress space, how to react collectively, how to reduce escape options. The duel was no longer abstract. It was direct. Hetzenauer adjusted again. He reduced the number of firing positions per operation, extended observation periods, favored locations that allowed vertical movement, steep slopes where pursuit was slow and coordination difficult. He also altered his selection of targets. Rather than firing at the first opportunity, he waited for moments that would create confusion rather than immediate pursuit. Officers issuing orders, messengers moving between units, individuals whose sudden absence would delay response. This was not about maximizing kills. It was about controlling reaction. According to documentation, this phase saw fewer shots per operation, but each one had disproportionate effect. Movement halted, units froze, command chains stalled, but proximity increased. Iron sights demanded it. Distances shortened, risk multiplied. During one engagement, enemy movement unexpectedly shifted, forcing Hetzenauer to withdraw along a route he had not planned to use. Snowfall that had once concealed movement now worked against him, collapsing underfoot, leaving subtle but detectable signs. Enemy elements moved closer. This time, there was no suppressive fire. There were voices, quiet close. The distance between hunter and hunted collapsed to levels measured in meters. At that range, camouflage mattered less than timing. Breathing had to be controlled. Movement delayed until absolutely necessary. According to post-war summaries, this encounter brought Hetzenauer closer to death than any previous engagement. Escape depended on patience rather than speed. Minutes stretched. Muscles locked. Cold seeped through clothing and into joints. Eventually, the search shifted away. The enemy moved on, convinced the sniper had withdrawn earlier. Hetzenauer did not move for an extended period after contact broke. Only when certainty returned did he withdraw. This phase marked the peak of the duel. Both sides had adapted. Both sides understood the other's methods. But only one side retained control over when the engagement began. The confirmed tally continued to rise, more slowly now, but relentlessly. And while the enemy had learned how to react, they still could not answer the central problem. They could respond to a shot. They could not prevent it. The duel had reached its most dangerous balance. One mistake would end it. For either side. Chapter 4, Consequence and Legy Block 1. The duel did not end with a dramatic confrontation. It ended the way most sniper wars end. Abruptly. According to military records, Matthäus Hetzenauer remained active until the final phase of fighting in the region. His confirmed tally continued to rise, even as front lines collapsed and command structures weakened. But the environment was changing. The war was ending. Order was breaking down. Front lines blurred into retreat corridors. This created a new danger. Not from enemy snipers. Not from patrols. From chaos. As organized resistance faded, movement became unpredictable. Units mixed. Civilians fled through combat zones. Identification became harder. Engagement rules broke down. In this phase, invisibility was no longer protection. It was liability. According to post-war documentation, Hetzenauer was wounded late in the conflict, not during a sniper engagement, but during movement amid collapsing lines. The wound removed him from further operations. He survived, but the danger did not end there. When hostilities ceased, he was captured by Soviet forces. For a sniper with hundreds of confirmed kills, capture was not a formality. It was a sentence waiting to be decided. He spent years as a prisoner of war. Years without a rifle, without camouflage, without control. The man who had survived months of precision combat now faced a different test: endurance without agency. According to records, he was held until 1955, 10 years, longer than the war itself. The number that defined his combat career remained unchanged: 345 confirmed kills. No revisions, no reductions. A figure recorded, reviewed, and accepted by military authorities. But the number alone does not explain the impact. During the period of his operations, entire sectors slowed. Patrol behavior changed. Movement patterns shifted. Fear altered decision-making at every level. That effect persisted even after his removal from the field. The damage did not end when the shot stopped. Block 2. After release, Hetzenauer returned to civilian life. There were no victory parades, no public recognition, no attempt to shape a narrative. He did not write memoirs. He did not seek attention. He did not build a legend. The records remained in archives. Unit reports, confirmation tallies, decorations awarded quietly. Historians would later reconstruct the scale of his effectiveness, not through dramatic anecdotes, but through numbers that refused to be ignored. A figure that places him among the most lethal snipers of the war, and one of the least discussed. His story reveals something uncomfortable about modern war. Technology did not decide those outcomes. Speed did not. Firepower did not. Time did. Patience, discipline, the ability to wait longer than the enemy could endure uncertainty. Hetzenauer did not dominate because he was unseen. He dominated because he chose when to be seen. Every engagement followed the same logic. Do not rush. Do not react. Do not repeat. That logic outlived the battlefield. The enemy adapted, changed tactics, compressed space. None of it removed the central threat. As long as one man controlled the moment of contact, the balance remained unstable. That is the legacy of this story. Not the number, not the weapon, not the uniform, but the realization that in war, the most dangerous force is not the one that advances fastest, but the one that decides when the fight begins.